Representative Ro Khanna detained by Israeli settlers in the West Bank.
Ro Khanna visited Turmus Aya in the occupied West Bank, a village with thousands of Palestinian Americans who have come under repeated attacks by Jewish settlers. Khanna says he became a target as well, detained by settlers and the Israeli military for more than an hour, according to Reuters.
By the way, insane. I mean, this is expected, but it's insane. And we've entered new territory where you don't even have the Israeli military, but actual fucking hilltop youths detaining not just American citizens, but now American representatives, okay? Elected members of Congress. In a normal planet, in a normal universe, we lived in a normal universe, this would be considered an international crisis. What the hell is going on? In Israel, it's, a Tuesday. Yeah. Shout out to Cam Kasky, Jasper Nathaniel, and also Ro Khanna for, doing this. I don't know what else to say about this other than the fact that this cannot go on. Okay, this is insane. It's complete insanity. What can you say?
I'm certainly probably the first American politician who's been detained by the IDF and Israeli settlers. I mean, we were at a village that Israeli settlers had destroyed. They had destroyed the school. They had destroyed that village, and we were just looking at it. And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road. And then they call the IDF, and the IDF...
Here's the funny part about this, or like the ironic part about this. Are you ready? Most of these settlers, a lot of these settlers, maybe not these guys, but a lot of these settlers are American citizens. If they were to do this in the United States of America to Ro Khanna, they would be in perma jail. They would be under the jail. Can you imagine if a bunch of masked thugs, not the ICE agents, but if a bunch of masked thugs that have no law enforcement capabilities whatsoever were to do an armed insurrection, a bunch of hogs came up to Ro Khanna and were like, get in the car, we're detaining you. They would be in prison. Even with our current system, even with this administration, they would be in prison. I'm sorry, guys. I know we say like, no, not under this admin. If they were ICE, they wouldn't. ICE does this all the time. But these are random people. They have no law enforcement capabilities. They just have guns that we gave them, ironically enough. Itamar Ben-Gvir gave them our guns that we shipped over there so they could form a militia.
Is on their side, not on the side of the Americans.
Khanna is on a 3-day trip to the West Bank as he weighs a potential presidential run in 2028. Support for Israel in the U.S. has fallen significantly, especially among Democrats, where a progressive young wing of the party has been highly critical of Israel.
I saw the arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my tax dollars are funding. Having no respect for the fact that they were detaining Americans. No respect that there was an American congressperson in that bus. And laughing when our translator told them that there are Americans there and the American embassy is concerned.
Khanna says the issue of Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank will be a moral test for his party.
It is the arrogance of a power that has had no accountability, total impunity.
Ro Khanna is reaching GOAT status at alarming levels, by the way. I'll say it. Ro Khanna is straight up reaching GOAT status slowly but surely at first, and now just I don't know. It's completely out of control.
And it's created a toxic culture of oppression.
Like, think about this, man. This is Ro Khanna, the same Ro Khanna, and yet so different. The same Ro Khanna that I had a conversation at the DNC. Remember? I had a talk with him at the DNC. It was public. You can go and watch it. Then another talk here at my house during Christmas time, right around the Epstein files release. It's called opportunism, brother. There's opportunism. And then there's straight up going to the West Bank and then getting detained by not just the Israeli occupying forces, but also by fucking West Bank settlers, Like, please, this is this is a level beyond. Okay, this is not performative. And if this is performative, I want this kind of performance from every single elected representative. Because how is this any different than when I glazed Chris Van Hollen for flying down to El Salvador to extract information about his constituent, Kilmar Abrego Garcia? This is what I want from my politicians. This is what I want from all politicians. And there were people who were saying it was performative when Van Hollen did it. And I said, no, this is good. We can, on the one hand, talk about how unaccountable Israeli settlers are and how dangerous Israeli settlers are on a daily basis, and then make it seem like Ro Khanna going out there is simply performative. We can't do that. We can't be doing that. That's crazy. He is putting his body on the line and shedding light some of the worst injustices that are taking place with our tax dollars right now. And as an American elected representative, him doing that is very important. I will not be having any Ro Khanna slander on the timeline, at least for this duration. You know, who knows where that Ro Khanna cycle might take us, but so far, this is very good. I have a consistent opinion on this. If someone puts their body on the line like that, I'm going to give them the praise that they deserve. Yeah, Congressman Ro Khanna said, in Palestine, I felt first as someone who was brown, he said. We really saw the apartheid-like conditions, the inequality. An American politician is blocked by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Representative Ro Khanna was barred from leaving for 90 minutes, where past U.S. leaders toured the region to show support for Israel. Today's Democratic presidential aspirants are going to bolster their credentials as critics. Even that's like a cynical byline, I'm going to be honest. Like, oh, yeah, he's just doing this as a way to show his bona fides as a Israel critic. You know what I mean? I think the story in and of itself is the fact that they straight up stopped him from moving around. Henn believes that after a U.S. congressman's bus is hijacked by machine gun wielding terrorists, it's appropriate for machine gun wielding soldiers to detain him. Henn is a fascist. Henn also seems to be historically swagless, but that's neither here nor there. Henn Mazik is very mad. My Wario. Jeremy Diamond was there too. Israeli settlers armed with clubs, rocks, and knives blocked our way and attacked us and another group of journalists today in the occupied West Bank at the same location where U.S. settlers beat citizen Saif Musallet to death exactly 1 year ago today. Even Dan Osborne says something about the Ro Khanna thing. I mean, yeah, dude, that's the whole point. Not Jamie Dimon, Jeremy Dimon. This is a different attack, by the way. This is not the same attack. This is a different attack. It just happens. I understand why you would confuse this with the same attack, because it happens all the time, all over the West Bank. Impunity. These guys get to do this with no accountability. These guys get to do this with impunity all the time, and they get defended by the Israeli occupying forces. The Israeli government knows exactly what's going on. They encourage it. They're perfectly on board with it. Make no mistake. But yeah, let's cover this. Israeli settlers had guns, and Representative Ro Khanna was scared. On Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Khanna, the congressman from Silicon Valley who's exploring a 2028 presidential run, was visiting the ruins of Kirbet Zanuda, a tiny Palestinian Bedouin village in the southern West Bank that was abandoned after escalating attacks from settlers and then demolished. Suddenly a car, that's a pogrom, by the way. Like, the New York Times is just like kind of glancing over it, but that's straight up a pogrom. Suddenly a car of men holding guns pulled up and blocked the narrow road out of the village. These men began taunting the congressman and his team, swearing at them in Hebrew and Arabic and kicking the tires off their minibus, according to accounts, photographs and video footage from Mr. Khanna, an aide, and his security guard. A photographer for the New York Times traveling in a different vehicle also saw the interaction. Soon a Jeep with more men arrived. When the two cars from the Israeli military pulled up, Mr. Khanna assumed the soldiers were there to help him pass. Instead, the soldiers smoked cigarettes, chatted with the men, and after the settlers left, moved a car to block the road, he recounted. I felt powerless in that situation, which is not an easy thing, as I have a lot of privilege in life, said Mr. Khanna, who was eventually allowed to continue his journey after calls to the U.S. Embassy and Israeli police. Imagine how people feel every day. Palestinians under the occupation, if they could make an American congressman feel powerless for 90 minutes. Mr. Khanna said the experience was the most frightening part of a 3-day trip organized by a member of his staff. In a statement on Saturday, a spokesperson for the Israeli military said that, dude, by the way, I just got to say, I'm so proud of Cam Kasky. Cameron is the motherfucking GOAT. Straight up. The best. Out of all of the HasanAbi heads out there, Cameron might be, he's top in the fucking charts right now. Okay? Second time coming back. First time he went during his short run in New York 12, ironically enough. And I think he could have defeated Michael Asher. I straight up believe that in my heart of hearts. Rank 1, top rank HasanAbi head, Cameron Kasky. You should all strive to be as cool as he is. Ro and I visited the destroyed village of Zanuta and the site of an EU-funded school that got burned down by settlers. It was here that we got intercepted and captured by settlers wielding American-made rifles. The IDF showed up to back up the settlers, not the U.S. congressman. He's the top dog, #1 draft pick. Straight up. Nadav Wyman says, I was there with Representative Ro Khanna as an expert on settler violence. Armed settlers were the first to arrive, and then, as has become the norm, Israeli soldiers joined them. Together, they detained the delegation for over an hour. The IDF is lying, and not for the first time. This is an incident of international status because of Ro Khanna's position as an American congressperson, right? But this is something that is completely routine in the United States of Israel, right? In the occupied territories, this level of violence, detainment, and far worse consequences for the average Palestinians or even Americans or even Israelis that try to aid the Palestinians and try to put their bodies on the line to block the settlers from engaging in pogroms. Yeah, the Israeli states of America. That is an everyday experience. That's the reason why Jeremy Diamond has a separate instance of violence in a different part of the West Bank, the occupied Palestinian territory. No other country gets to do this. No other country will take our weapons and then train those weapons on our congresspersons, on our citizens even. Any other country that does this, they're getting invaded. This is the reality of apartheid. That's it. This is the reality for Israel. Wait, Jeremy Diamond got attacked again? Yes, it's kind of, it's a sad state of affairs, but I feel like Jeremy Diamond is on getting your ass beat by settlers beat on fucking CNN. I feel like Jeremy Diamond's existence in Israel is literally just driving around the West Bank until some random fucking hilltop youth try to beat his ass or like throw rocks at his car, terrify him until the IDF comes, and then the IDF will also terrify him further. Jeremy Diamond every other week is getting his ass beat. Every other week. What makes it strange to me, at least, is that the rest of the CNN crew, live in the United States of America or are stationed in Tel Aviv, don't turn around and cover this stuff to be like, hey, what are we doing here? This is terrorism. Can you please stop terrorizing our journalist all the time as you do virtually every other fucking day? What the hell is this? Has Ro been released? Yes. Guys, this happened the Ro thing happened a couple days ago, by the way. He's already in the United States of America. I will be having Ro Khanna on the broadcast hopefully tomorrow, or if not tomorrow, on Monday. Definitely on Monday. I was supposed to have him on yesterday, but he was traveling, so we couldn't make it happen. We couldn't make it work. In a statement on Saturday, a spokesperson for the Israeli military said that it had received the report of Israeli civilians unlawfully blocking the vehicles of foreign nationals and members of the news media near the village on Wednesday. Troops were dispatched and reopened the road, the spokesperson said. Of course, classic. We investigated ourselves, and I'll have you know, we found no wrongdoing. Shocking. Definitely. I'm so surprised that Israel would find itself, Israel would look at the situation and say, hey, actually, this is perfectly valid for us. The military disputed that its soldiers had participated in blocking the exit and said that the identity of the armed civilian was being reviewed. At a time when Israel's hemorrhaging support among Americans, and particularly among Democrats, a tour of the West Bank is a new way for progressive politicians to signal their concern. For decades, potential presidential aspirants made pilgrimages to Israel in hopes of burnishing their foreign policy credentials. Their trips followed a familiar itinerary: meetings with Israeli political leaders, sightseeing at the Western Wall, maybe even kissing it, a tour of the Israel city damaged by Palestinian rocket fire, visits with Palestinian leaders in Ramallah, a city in the West Bank. The goal was to demonstrate their commitment to the United States' special relationship with a longtime ally. But where past Democratic leaders headed to the region to show their support, so far today's Democratic presidential aspirants are going to bolster their credentials as critics. Mr. Khanna said what he observed in the West Bank would inform his politics and perhaps his run for president. If he mounted a campaign, Palestinian rights would be a key focus, he said. I have something unique to offer about the injustice of Palestinians, he said. I'm going to go to every corner of America, regardless of whether I run or not, and tell their stories and tell the story of what's happening in the West Bank. Violent attacks by Israeli settlers on Palestinians in the West Bank have intensified since the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7, 2023 that set off the war in Gaza. The response of the Israeli authorities have generally ranged from unkept promises to address the problem to blame shifting to outright denial. As Mr. Khanna was being blocked by settlers in the West Bank, Rahm Emanuel, another potential presidential candidate, was speaking at Tel Aviv University, where he delivered his own critique of Israel and a 23-state solution. Rahm, What kind of crack are you smoking? 23 state solution for Israel and all the Arab nations? Fuck it. Infinite state solution. This man is going to abolish the concept of a nation state through first principles and a reconstruction. How about infinity states? How about one state per every human? Every man his own state. Could have been a typo. No, I don't think this was a typo. I don't think Rahm Emanuel went to Tel Aviv University and was like, how about like 2 to 3 states? How about a 2 to 3 state solution? And then they foolishly wrote 23 state solution in the New York Times. Yeah, Rahm has been also running the gamut on criticisms of Israel in ways that previously would be considered unfathomable, especially by someone like Rahm Emanuel, who is like a pivotal fixture in center-right moderate Democratic Party politics. But he's a guy who obviously understands which way the winds are blowing. The prime minister and his government have led Israel into a dead end, said Mr. Emanuel, the former Chicago mayor and White House chief of staff, who called for an end to U.S. military aid to the country. Opposition to Israel has emerged as a key factor in midterm race from Michigan to New York, as a progressive wing is positioned the issue as a central moral test for Democratic candidates. The visits this week by Mr. Khanna and Mr. Emanuel indicate that presidential aspirants are preparing for America's relationship with Israel to become a litmus test in 2028. Mr. Khanna, too, has shifted on the issue. He's visited Israel 3 times, including in October 2024 as a part of a bipartisan delegation that met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and King Abdullah of Jordan. Mr. Khanna says he still supports Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. What is he saying? What is my man saying, dude? This is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. It's just like back to the cycle. Anyway, but criticism of the country has become increasingly central to his public image. He's repeatedly accused the country of genocide and endorsed calls to cut off U.S. support even for the Iron Dome missile defense system. Last month, Mr. Khanna went from a target of Track AIPAC, a group that opposed the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, to winning its endorsement in his race for re-election this year. What he saw in the West Bank, Mr. Khanna said, convinced him that the region's problems won't be solved just by replacing Israeli leadership. One of the things this made me realize is how hard a 2-state solution is going to be in practice, that it's going to require the removal of a lot of violent settlers, he said. The on-the-ground reality is so much more brutal and hard and difficult. On his trip, Mr. Khanna visited a number of Palestinian towns and met with families of local business owners. The mayors of Bethlehem, Beit Shair, Beit Jala described the restrictions on their freedom of movement and access to water. They told Mr. Khanna that they had never met a member of Congress, according to the video recorded by his team, and would welcome his colleagues. In the southern West Bank village of al-Khair, he met with the family of Abdav Hat-Halin, a well-known Palestinian activist whose work was featured in the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, and who was killed by an Israeli settler. On his final day, he visited a school where a 14-year-old was gunned down in broad daylight by a settler and met with Palestinian Americans who described stories of being beaten and threatened. Mr. Khanna, who is Indian American and grew up in Pennsylvania, said he had never been so aware of his race as on his trip. In Palestine, I felt first as someone who was brown, he said. We really saw the apartheid-like conditions, the inequality. He added, no American would support this if they knew the details of what was going on here. Well, ironically enough, I think the Americans that know the details of what's going on there are the ones that are more likely to support it, whether it be the evangelical Christian Zionists that visit the West Bank, or whether it be the Zionist Jews who have family members that directly live in the West Bank. It's just, but I get the point that he's making. The average American, if they understood exactly what was going on, would be horrified by it. Mr. Khanna's trip was organized by Cameron Kasky, a Parkland school shooting survivor who ran for Congress with a platform of opposing what he called Israel's genocide in Gaza. Mr. Kasky, 25, withdrew from the race to work with Mr. Khanna on combating settler violence in the West Bank. He now works for Mr. Khanna on digital strategy. The idea of the trip grew out of an interview. 2 of my goats, man, Jasper Nathaniel and Cameron Kasky, an independent journalist who focuses exclusively on the West Bank. Daniel C. Kurtzer, a Princeton professor who was the ambassador to Israel under President George W. Bush and has been involved with trips for U.S. dignitaries, said Mr. Khanna had apparently received a particular view of the region. He got an earful in the company of people who I would say are probably not objective analysts, said Mr. Kurtzer. Unlike you, right? You just mean he got to see the other side, the side that most American politicians don't hear from, the side that is oftentimes not even considered as human beings. That's the problem. That's the issue. That's what he's saying. Make no mistake. You know, the side of the people that fucking lived there and have lived there for hundreds of years. But Mr. Khanna described the visit as uncurated, Palestinian-led glimpse into the West Bank, and is one he believes more members of Congress and potential presidential candidates should experience. He also left with some parting words for the Israeli government. Free advice to Israelis: not a good idea to detain long-shot presidential candidates, he said. Not how you're going to build goodwill with the next American president, whoever that is. Hen Mazik has some thoughts on it. Let's see the other side of the story. Let's hear the side that never shuts the fuck up, that only gets coverage in American news, with the exception of this trip because it was an American congressperson with aspirations for the presidency. Let's hear from my choppelganger, Bizarro Hasan Piker. Ro Khanna has shared that he was allegedly stopped by Israeli settlers in the West Bank for 90 minutes. Here we go. Hasbro machine. HasanAbi. Time and again, I have had to come out and condemn radical Israelis in the West Bank, and I will continue to do so. The behavior of this minority and the violence, the behavior of this minority, just a bunch of bad apples, just a bunch of random guys. The behavior of this minority and the violence we have seen from them is abhorrent. I've read Ro Khanna's piece on his experience, and I have great sympathy for what happened to him. Having guns waved in your face is not a nice experience by any rate. I will not downplay the actions of radicals no matter what side they proclaim they are on. Though I will add one note. While the Israeli citizens behaved terribly, I think the focus should be on that and not on the idea of delaying Khanna's entry while they checked in with the embassy to make sure he was allowed through. The fuck are you talking about? That revelation in and of itself shows that this dynamic is busted. That's illegal. The IDF doesn't get to do any law enforcement operations on illegally occupied territory, and especially not against a fucking American congressperson. How normalized is this reality in your mind that you're like, well, these fucking terrorists were perfectly well within their rights to go in and stop and restrict the travel of an American congressperson in illegally occupied territory that they illegally occupy with their weapons that they get from the American taxpayers that Ro Khanna at a certain point in his life has actually signed off on, ironically enough, when he was writing off aid packages to Israel. What a change of pace for Ro Khanna. Should there be checkpoints and security measures in a perfect world? No, but with the threat of terror, what do you mean checkpoints and security measures? Dog, it's illegal. You are illegally occupying this territory. You don't get to put security checkpoints. This is like going to Russian-occupied Donbass and being like, well, there has to be security checkpoints because after Russia invaded the country and occupied it and annexed the territory, they have to make sure that it's like, secure. The fuck do you mean? Bitch, it's not your land to secure. What do you mean secure? Your presence is not security. Your presence is insecurity. Anyway, but people claiming he was held hostage are minimizing the term and making a mockery of all of it. I work with Israeli. Oh, and then here come the tears. You can't have a Hasbarist write any long screed without hearing about the feelings, okay? We have to hear about my feelings. You're engaging in minimization. You're minimizing my beautiful hostages by talking about you getting detained. How dare you say detainment? The real detainment is my feelings, my feelings, my feelings. Me. My feelings. Nobody gives a fuck about your feelings, bitch. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, hostage taking. Dude, that's like a sketch at this point. You know what I mean? Imagine there's a bank robbery going on and one of the tellers is held hostage. Hen Mazik comes on the scene and goes, hold on. Only Hamas can take hostages of Israeli Jews. Everybody else, you can't use that term. It hurts my feelings to hear. It hurts my feelings to hear you say that this person was taken hostage. Only Hamas is capable of taking hostages. How dare you use such a fiery term here? This is unacceptable. You must stop. You must stop right now. You are not allowed to use the term hostage taking. Who died and made these guys the fucking gatekeepers of terminology such as genocide, hostage taking? Like, I don't understand it. You know what I mean? Why? Why should anybody be like, oh, I'm sorry, an Israel supporter is speaking, I didn't realize. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Who the fuck do you think you are where you're like, listen, you can criticize my emotional support apartheid state, but you better choose your words carefully. Okay, suck my dick. Those are the words I'm choosing carefully. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, what is this? Is he reporting or giving an opinion? I mean, he's a Hasbarist, so every opinion that he's giving is an opinion that is like Hen Mazik's entire job is to try to normalize what Israel does on a regular basis, try to like infiltrate Hollywood circles and try to get like a couple suckers duped into writing something that they're going to get yelled at later down the line because it was like unbelievably pro-Israel, and people will reflect back at it as though you were doing pro-genocide propaganda. That's his job. His job is to launder the reputation of Israel. He does a very he does a very piss poor job at it. It's a very tough job, to be fair. But people claiming he was held hostage or minimizing the term and making a mockery of all of it. I work with Israeli hostages held at gunpoint by Hamas under a tunnel in the dark with no food for years, absurd, and raped. You cannot compare it. Regardless, this situation must be very stressful, and for that, Ro Khanna has my deepest sympathies. And then Ukrainian flag, Israeli flag in the bio. You lost me at the part where you extended him sympathy. He deserves no sympathy whatsoever. Don't be so nice, Hen. Ro is a Nazi. The settler issue must be addressed, but he's there because he's running for office. Stop being apologetic, appeaser. You have no idea who this guy is.
I saw the arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my tax dollars are funding, having no respect for the fact that they were detaining Americans, no respect that there was an American congressperson in that bus, and laughing when our translator told them that there are Americans there and the American embassy is concerned. It is the arrogance of power, of a power that has had no accountability, total impunity.
I mean, I think we got to workshop that a little bit. Ro, you got to talk about how a group of settlers that do this to an American congressman, God knows what they're doing to American activists, and nobody even talks about what they're doing to the Palestinians every day.
And it's created a toxic culture of oppression.
Because that's the reality here. The people and the institutions that do this to Ro Khanna are doing far worse shit to the Palestinians. And we know that already, right? And that's kind of what he's there to highlight. He did a good job, though.